Hey there. Welcome to the Victor Cho Podcast, where I hopefully help you make some sense of this crazy world of technology and how it collides with humanity. Today, I am super excited to be chatting with Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton is an icon in technology. He has scaled three, maybe more that I don't know of, but three huge businesses over the last 30 years. Including a mega unicorn, maybe multiple mega unicorns in his history. So what I love about Mike is he is at the forefront of so many technologies, has scaled successful businesses, but I think as you'll see, he approaches this with a humility and an empathy that is kind of rare in technology. So Mike, such a pleasure to have you here on in our kind of first wave of shows. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, Victor, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. I always love our time together and looking forward to this.
Awesome. So let's just jump right into it. We'll have around 30 minutes. First topic I just love to cover is you. I mean, there are so few people, I think, that have successfully scaled. Scaling one company is a feat, but doing it three different times across multiple technology waves, to me, is almost unheard of. I think, tell me if you agree, I think we're going through the fourth, right? This AI wave is maybe one of the biggest. So I would just love to talk a little bit about what's different. What's different about this one?
Yeah.
Anything? And given your experience, like, would you have done things differently? I'm curious. Like, if you were starting these businesses, could you even start these businesses today? Or it would be just a completely different environment? Where do you see it out there?
Yeah. I really love talking about this. It's such a great question. I get asked this a lot. I've been around for a long time in technology, over 30 years, really over 40, if I'm honest. And
don't look it.
Waves, too kind. Waves like this have happened before. I think the ones that really stick out in my mind are sort of the original internet wave of the late 90s. Probably the closest to what we're experiencing with AI. And I think certainly the mobile revolution, starting with the release of the iPhone in around 2008, also a similar revolution. And I think, while this is unique and has different attributes, which we can talk about, I think there are some real learnings from the past as to how this is likely to play out. And that's really how I think about it. The internet revolution of the 90s is the most similar thing that I see to AI and what's happening currently. Where I see the biggest similarities, first and foremost, I do think that this is legitimately going to revolutionize just about every industry and business on the planet. There's not going to be much that isn't touched by AI. I think that's already happening in a lot of industries. I think there's a lot of industries that are yet to be really meaningfully affected that certainly will be. The internet was a lot like that. There were places where it was really obvious that it was going to revolutionize things, but then there turned out to be a lot of places where it wasn't as obvious in the beginning, but over time got completely transformed. I don't think cab drivers in 1997 thought that they were going to get disrupted by the internet.
Yeah.
And I think AI is going to end up being like that. Today we talk about programmers, and we talk about interactive agents that I can converse with. There are certain industries that are obvious examples where disruption is happening. A lot of white collar jobs, a lot of places where there's rote work that is easily, there's been a lot of easy targets, but I think that cab driver example is going to be even bigger in this current wave. There are going to be industries that no one's even remotely thinking are going to get disrupted by AI that will happen eventually. And so, your question is a good one because, I took a lot of learnings. I had founded a company in 1993, with a couple of other people. And, we were only 2 or 3 years into the company when the internet wave really came along. And it changed our entire strategy as to how to go to market and what products to build. And there's a lot of lessons that I learned from that, both on the boom part of that wave, where as well as the bust part of that wave. And I think on the boom side of what we're experiencing today, I really think it's critical that you stay in the macro as much as you possibly can, especially in the current phase of AI that we're in, where I think we're on the very.
What does that mean, staying in the
Yeah,
macro? Yeah,
it's a great question. Yeah. What I mean by that is the pace of change in this really early phase of the AI revolution. The pace of change is so dramatic. Think about 1995, 96, for those of you that were around then. The internet browser that mattered was Netscape Navigator, and then eventually Internet Explorer. And, if you started making bets on, gee, which one of these is going to win? Well, in the end, neither of them, some iterations of those things persist today, but the technologies that ended up winning over time, Yahoo, and there were search browsers that, Google was not even on the map for a long time as a search, solution. And Google came along somewhat later in the revolution. And if you just look at the big platforms and technologies and players that ended up really becoming the dominant survivors from that revolution, none of them really started early. And the early leaders, almost none of them became the long-terms. And so if you're a developer or you're a startup and you're thinking about, gee, which learning model do I bet on? Or, pick any technology that I need to bet on that's AI related. The micro to me is making massive bets and betting your whole company on technologies that might not be around in 5 years versus staying in the macro. When I say macro, I mean, look at the bigger trends and try to be as agile as you can in how you think about building your products and your companies that are going to allow you to adapt for some of these platforms really changing out over time. That's easily said, really hard to do. But I think
let me ask you this, because so I'm running a startup, and one thing I talk about is, look, we're running on a new world where there is intelligence as a service, right? And so I kind of have told the team, let's think about everything as a service that's consumable, and we have no idea who's going to provide that service in the future. Maybe today it's OpenAI, maybe it's someone else, and kind of extrapolating or creating this intermediary mindset around intelligence services, I think is helping us get to some of that point. Is that a little bit of kind of what you're describing?
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I come from the engineering and product side of technology. And I think it's really easy to say, think of it as a service, build it with thinking about any platform can plug and play, be adaptable. Those are easy words to say. They're really, there's a cost to that, right? There is a cost to that that's not cheap. And there's a balance that you have to strike there. I need to go to market. I need to get solutions out. I need to leverage the services that I have. And so, I think an element of staying nimble, to me, the big thing I would say is stay nimble.
Yeah.
And, back in the days of Concur, I really think about when we were really building our first wave of internet products, the number of iterations that we went through, the technologies that we used, the approaches we took, the pace at which we changed those answers was so high in the beginning. We were willing to make big adjustments very quickly. And over time, it started, there's sort of a curve where the pace of change is so high in the beginning of a wave like this. And there's a long tail where it begins to stabilize, and you start to see the platforms that are going to win and the technologies that are going to win. But in the beginning, I mean, there were 10 different ways to build, web browser based products, and it was not easy to sort of know which of these are going to win in the long term.
Yeah.
And
Super curious.
AI is AI is very much like that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it triggers a thought, which is, I forget which of I think it might have been Sam Altman who said he predicted, and maybe it's misattributed, but the core thought was like, there's going to be another unicorn, like a single person is going to build $1 billion business because
I've seen that quote.
AI technologies and these agentic systems. And I'm super interested in one, since you've been core to product build, right? And me as well, right? It's always been the people, right, that figure out how to build these experiences, iterate. Do you buy that premise that a single person could build and go through that learning and that iteration, and these agentic systems could be smart enough to get that feedback? Or are you like, no, that's going to be people still?
I saw that clip for the first time a while ago, and it was very thought provoking for sure. I don't think he's crazy. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I would say that. I mean, you're running a startup, you're running a technology startup. I'm involved in a lot of startups today that are very AI centered. And my observation is that the scale that is possible with AI is very real even today. I see it absolutely in places like engineering. And really all aspects of product development. You and I just had a recent conversation about this. I think about product management and product design and, um, uh, product definition building, beyond just getting to build, test, deploy, operate. There is not one of those elements of a product development lifecycle that isn't being touched in a really dramatic way by AI. And I think even in today's world, today, you're seeing scale from AI in all of those places. I'm seeing it most dramatically today in engineering, but I am seeing it in all of those areas. And I think we are just scratching the surface of where it's going.
Yeah, one of the favorite things that came out of that, and Mike is an advisor to my company, just in full transparency. We get some of the best feedback from him, but we had this great conversation around AI. And when I consider these like walking away from conversations with golden nuggets, that the conversation ended up with this idea of like one of them, which I was really excited about, was, interfaces today are fixed. They've been fixed forever, right? You build a thing and it's static. And with this world of AI where we have systems that can code on the fly, like you could see a world of what I call fluid, and we can make up the term today, fluid interfaces, right? Where maybe it's not a single interface, right? It's literally a custom crafted experience. Now that's not going to happen today, but 10, 20 years from now, like are all of our software experiences like completely custom to who I could see that world, right? It's a really exciting world.
That was a really fun conversation. I think these big waves, they produce outputs that you never thought were possible.
Yeah.
The mobile revolution for me is a really good example where we came up with whole new metaphors, and just in the topic you're describing around sort of user experiences, user interfaces, we came up with whole new metaphors that had never been imagined before because of that form factor existing. And I think AI is going to do things like that, maybe at a much more dramatic scale. The one theme that I see that is really exciting is this idea of really hyper personalizing every experience.
Yep.
And, it's one of the most limiting factors of software development is it's a one to many, often one to millions or even billions of how you have to sort of go reach people. And software allows so much incredible scale. It's what I fell in love with all those years ago with software development, was the idea you could touch so many people with just your hands and a keyboard and a little technology. What AI is unlocking is the ability to make every one of those, million or billion people's experiences really, really unique and personalized, which is kind of the theme when you talk about something like a fluid interface. That's how I think about it, is that, I can know so much more about Victor and how he likes to interact with things. And, the more you feed me information about Victor, the more I can personalize how I deliver my service to you. So this idea of personalization, I think we have certain preconceptions of what that means as product people.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's going to get redefined in a way that we almost cannot imagine as to what's going to be possible to be delivered.
I think
And that's really exciting. That's one of the more exciting elements of AI is it can be scary that something is going to know so much about me, and it's going to feel like it's inside my brain. It knows me so well. But to me, I think AI unleashes things like that for us, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, IBS, it's like this two-sided coin where on one hand, these amazing outcomes are going to have, it's like, similar to you, tiny bit younger. I think you had sold your first company, which was Acts by the time I started Microsoft right around then. But yeah, I've been a technologist forever. So on one hand, I'm so excited about what's possible. On the other hand, there are these downstream impacts, right? This is one thing that drives me is like, are our technology leaders thinking about the second order impacts, the downstream impacts? One area where I see this, maybe one of the most important industries is in health. And your last company, Accolade, amazing business, was sold off successfully, bringing transparency to doctors. I'd love, or doctor/patient relationship. I'd love your perspectives on that dynamic, that tension in the health sphere. Like, what are you seeing? I think AI is one of the most impactful in terms of positive end results I can see, but I could also see some very dark, not to be pessimistic, but I could see some pretty bad second order impacts. So I'm curious I know you.
Yeah, certainly. I've spent the last decade really thinking about that problem, and the general theme of just applying technology to the problem of healthcare. And I think in the last, for the last many years of that experience, really specifically thinking about AI and how it can have an impact on healthcare. And, I mostly have a very positive view of that. I think that, the healthcare problems in the world, but especially in our country, the way our healthcare system works, the problems are, for a lot of people, it's the overwhelming problem in their life. Getting access to quality care in the right way at the right time, in a way they can afford, and getting people to the care that they need, and just getting them to care at all, to be able to have care delivered to them at all. Those are enormous problems, and I think AI has way more positive attributes to solving those than negative. And I'm personally extremely optimistic about what AI can do for healthcare. I think, and there's a lot of aspects to it, right? I was very focused on trying to make the healthcare experience for the average consumer much more friendly and effective, getting people to helping people understand what their options are and getting them to the best possible answer for themselves as fast as possible. I think AI is enormously, the possibilities of what it can do to solve that problem are enormous. Everything from the ability to interact with agents as a consumer, and the agents really having an intimate knowledge of my situation, back to personalization. There's a lot of privacy to solve there, and getting humans comfortable with knowing so much about sensitive data about my health. Those are not insignificant challenges, but you overcome those and the possibilities are amazing. And all the way to, AI can go solve medical problems, right? I mean, people talk about AI curing cancer and solving disease problems and things like that, and then the assists that it can have there. We're in like such the beginning of that phase. I don't think we even know. I don't think anyone really knows how far we can go there. In what can AI do to solve medical problems, diseases, cancer, in thinking of new ways, surgery, surgical techniques. I've talked to surgeons about that. Um, just coming up with new things without even human input. There's so many possibilities there.
The one that blew my mind, this was maybe 6 months ago. I forget which of the news articles, but they did the test where they had a diagnostic just pure from AI assisted doctor, and then just a doctor. And the AI actually did the best diagnostic.
There you go.
Well, on one hand, I'm
it's
super excited about that because I'm like,
yeah,
wow, imagine all the people on the planet who don't get good diagnostics that now can get this, right? With right.
For sure.
Little cost.
For sure.
So,
and AI is already, AI is already having such an impact in so many areas of medicine and health. I think affordability is to me, there are so many people who cannot afford any kind of healthcare.
yes.
And there are even more people who are terrified that healthcare is going to bankrupt them, or they can't afford it. At Accolade, I have so many heartbreaking stories of just everyday people just being terrified, sitting outside of emergency rooms with their kid who's sick, waiting to see if they get more sick because they really don't want to go in the ER because they know it's going to cost them money because their insurance is not really that great. That is how everyday Americans live with their health, is a lot of fear about cost. And I think AI has a promise of really maybe transforming that over time. And again, there are challenges. There's huge challenges. I think overcoming the data side of health. Health is one of the most sensitive pieces of data in people's lives. There's a lot of regulation around it. Mm-hmm. And I think you also have, healthcare in the US, access to data is a real problem. It's extremely challenging. There's a very small number of companies that kind of control your health data. I think this has been a decades-long battle trying to sort of open up access to data and give people more control over their own health data. AI needs that data to solve problems. And, I think those are things that will work themselves out over the long haul. But I think that's going to be one of the biggest impeders to making progress in AI, is continuing to find ways to unlock that data and primarily to give more control over to consumer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, just personally, without disclosing any crazy personal info, have you done something in health where you've interacted with an AI where you've been surprised, or you're like, wow, I wouldn't have thought that AI or AI?
Many times. I mean, many times. I think at Accolade, we were on a big mission to see how far we could go with that. And, there's a million startups that are doing really interesting things that I had the opportunity to work with and explore and look at. And, I think what's out there is incredible. Your ability to, the interesting thing, Victor, for me with health, it's one of the most personal, emotional elements of our lives. You think about your kid being sick, like what's more emotional than that? Your kid is sick and they need to go see a doctor. That is like one of the most important things in people's lives.
Yeah.
And I think, and when it's that emotional, it tends to become something that people are often reluctant to not interact with a human to solve. It's really easy for us to interact with AI when we're just looking for generic advice or we have sort of basic questions.
Yeah.
But when my kid is really sick, trusting AI to give me the diagnosis or the right path forward, people tend to have a lot of fear and uncertainty about that. There's something about a human-to-human touch that people still value. I think it will take time to sort of break that down. And, there's been examples of that in the past where we wouldn't have trusted people in the past to do certain things that now we never use people for. Yeah. If you had asked people in the 50s, like, hey, you're going to walk up to a wall and get cash out of a machine, and you're never going to walk in a bank to get cash again, they would go, I don't have no idea what you're talking about. Like, that sounds terrifying.
People that don't realize
that's my money. That's terrifying. and now people used to have to talk to humans and go in a building to do that. And so, and even more so, there's not even cash anymore. And so I just think healthcare has a lot of that kind of element to it today in my mind. I think the way our children and grandchildren for me, the way my grandchildren will interact with healthcare probably will be very unfamiliar to me. And it will probably involve an incredible amount of automation and non-human contact.
I think
And that could be all the way up to doctors and surgeons and, pharmacy. And you could imagine the whole gamut of the healthcare life cycle. So,
right. I mean, this is what that maybe the question of the age for us, which is as these systems get more and more efficient, right? You can asymptotically see a curve where we're spending just less time interacting with each other as human beings. And I ran Evite before this. I'm a huge believer, and there's data and science around the power of face-to-face interaction and humans connecting for empathy and all the reasons that we've evolved to love each other and get joy. And so that's one of the most fascinating tensions for me is this trade-off between potential efficiency, but then the humanity aspect of connection it's not going to get answered in the short term.
We could do a whole other podcast on that topic, Victor. I think.
Absolutely. No.
I mean, I certainly have a lot of opinions about that. I mean, I think the whole lesson of social media, to me, the good and the bad, is very related to that whole concept of, I think humans realize maybe now, or we're maybe still in the process of learning, like there's really not a substitute for a true human to human connection.
That's right.
And it can be really dangerous. There are certain scenarios where it can be really dangerous and harmful to start disassociating everything about the human experience. Yeah. And AI is going to really test humanity, I think, on this question. Like, what does it mean to have a human connection? Like, I think about the work you're doing with Emovid, and I think it's a really good example of remembering that a human to human connection is still like one of the most fundamental elements of who we are as humans and what existence means. And in a world where more and more of everything you need to do in life is going to be done without having to interact with humans, well, where does that leave the human experience and the ability to sort of connect with each other? Those are really big questions.
Yeah.
I'm always an optimist that humanity will figure that out. And at the end of the day, our craving for connection is always going to persist, regardless of how much automation exists. But
I'm also an optimist, but I heard the greatest framing of social media, which I thought was maybe a correct frame. And the message was, look, we've already lost the first war against AI. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, there's been no war with AI. And their take was, no, abstractly, what is the social media industry, right? It is an ecosystem of experiences that are algorithmically, not the new LLM, but increasingly will be, right? An ecosystem of attention experiences, algorithmically driven, and humanity has lost that battle, right? We are not in a position with those experiences where we would have want to architected our way to this point. And now we're dealing with all the ramifications. I was like, that's a really interesting perspective. Mike, I know we're running short of time. This has been tremendous. I have two quick questions. I would love to leave people with two kind of maybe tactical things that they can do on a day-to-day basis. So first one is personal tips. Anything that you'd like to share? What do you do personally to just stay abreast of this chaotic change, which feels like it's just accelerating? Any one or two things where you're like, I do X to keep up to speed?
I love that question always. Well, Victor, I'm a hyper curious person. I have been my entire life. And I've had a couple of really long-term sort of startup experiences of starting companies, and they've gone on for a decade, 2 decades, and where you have to have just a lot of focus on the same basic problem over and over again. And so, at this stage of my life and career, I really love the fact that I get to be really curious about lots of things and get exposed to lots of things all the time. And so, one of my biggest pieces of advice is just don't be afraid of all this AI stuff going on. Don't sort of doom scroll your way into the dismal scenarios or have fear, because I think it's always the first human reaction. How is this going to affect me? Is my job going to be gone? Is my business idea dead on arrival? Don't instead look at the opportunity that AI provides you. AI is, as an entrepreneur, I wish I was 25 again. I really do, because in my entire lifetime, there has never been a more exciting opportunity to go start a company and change industries, change processes, solve problems that have been unsolvable or never been solved. There's never been a better opportunity to go do all that stuff than right now today.
Yeah.
It is such an exciting time. And my biggest advice to people is be very curious and go see what's out there. Don't be afraid, but embrace it. And also really think about the problems of the world that no one's thinking about. There's the headlines of where AI is disrupting already. I was an engineer. I started my career as a software engineer. And, that's a big headline industry today, right?
Yeah.
Oh, engineers are dead. There's, who would pursue an engineering degree anymore? That's getting all the headlines. Well, there's a million industries that people aren't talking about or thinking about that are going to get disrupted by this revolution that haven't even started to get disrupted yet.
That's right.
What are those? Go think about that. And, that's where the really big companies got built in the previous, go back to the beginning of our convo. These previous big waves of transformation, a lot of times it was the downstream problems that became the much bigger opportunities than the immediate, what people thought were the obvious choices. And again, AI is going to affect everything. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you make or do, what the nature of your business is. AI is going to transform it. I promise you that.
I love that optimistic view. I think people gravitate towards, make it cheaper, make it faster. But you said it a little bit earlier. What's also most exciting is things that are impossible problems are going to be solvable now. And that's so exciting, right? Things that we just thought, how do I even attack that?
Yeah.
It's not attackable.
I mean, right, Victor, the first reaction of almost every massive transformation, the internet was very much like this. People were mostly afraid.
Yeah.
Like business leaders were mostly afraid of what it meant. Is my business dead? What does this mean for my business? People often have entrepreneurs aren't this way necessarily, but people are often very much about protectionism and fear. And I've been doing it this way for a long time. I don't want to change this. I'm afraid. Adopting a mindset of embracing this and seeing it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
That to me is the key to sort of like having the right attitude of how to think about a transformation like this.
I love it. I love the optimism of it. And I think it's also exactly right? We're in this world where people are going to have superpowers. Like let's go embrace those and figure out how to amplify ourselves. Mike, it's been such a treat. Thanks so much for being part of this first cohort of my podcast. I really appreciate it. There'll be kind of links and details in the notes. But last quick one: any podcast, reference site, any specific thing you'd want to share? Of hey guys, just go check out this book, podcast.
You're kind of stumping me on that one. I have kind of just a super broad pipeline of it's hard for me to point to one thing.
Go broad. That's a great thing.
Yeah. I almost hesitate to go pick any one. I don't feel like I have one or two sources of content in the world of AI where I'm like, oh, that's where I get the best content all the time.
I think that in and of itself is a great thing.
Yeah.
Right? Go broad, right? Really.
I tend to have like a super broad pipeline of where I get it from. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Mike, such a treat. Thank you so much.
Likewise. It's been a real pleasure, Victor. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you all.
Take care.
See you in the next episode. In addition to running this podcast, I'm also the CEO of Emovid. In business today, it's impossible for anyone to tell what digital communication is real versus AI generated or modified. This is a huge issue that we have actually solved at Emovid. Emovid is the only guaranteed authentic asynchronous communication platform that has been built for business. If your business relies upon relationship and trust building, this is a must-have platform for you and your teams. Please check out emovid.com at emovid.com, or even better, if you can see it, scan the QR code and you'll get to see the product in action and even get a special podcast offer. Thank you again for listening.